the way you all get to be part of the podcast.
Presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Got to give, I know it ain't no way to live. Told that devil to take you back. I told that devil to take you back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Batchelder.
And I'm Bonnie Farrar. And we're live from St. Louis.
And if you couldn't tell already, this is Tales of the Black Badge, and yeah, we're kind of winging it today, so just go with it, everybody. Go with it.
We're playing it fast and loose.
Fast and loose, yes. And if you're listening at home, there are thousands of people in the audience, right?
I mean, gosh.
Oh, man. Yes, welcome to the podcast. Show of hands for those of you sitting here in our audience. For how many of you this is your first Earp-Con?
Lots of them.
That's amazing. I just love that. I love that more than I can say. It's so good. And it sounds like a stupid question, but I love to ask it. I assume you're having a good time this weekend.
Woo! Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we do these live podcasts, since many of you who are here know, we just kind of wing it. We like to have fun and talk about whatever topics are kind of on the mind of the people who are here in the audience. This kind of becomes your podcast topic. We have a handful of questions that we're sending ahead of time from listeners, but we don't have like a script that we're going to run with other than maybe talking a little bit about some of the stuff that's happened this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
I don't know. Meeting Anna fucking Silk was pretty damn cool. I'm just going to go there first. Let's just go there first.
That's a good place to start with.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a good place to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually ran into her the first night, Thursday night, in the lobby, that beautiful lobby here in the hotel. A few of the Earpers were standing around, and she was kind of coming through and came over to chat with us. And I thought we did good playing it cool, even though we weren't.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm known for my chill. I'm just chill all the time, right? No, but we did. We played it pretty professional, I think. No, it was really cool. For those of you who don't know, which we've talked about this a lot. We won't go into tremendous detail, but Kevin and I met at Dragon Con in 2015 in line going to see Lost Girl. We're both Lost Girl fans, and that's how we met. Flash forward about 8 months?
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah.
8 months, and we started doing the podcast. So it would not be, to say that Lost Girl brought us together is absolutely true. Because without Lost Girl, I wouldn't have found Winona, and I wouldn't have found Kevin, and vice versa. So it was really cool to have Anna Silk here. Kind of felt like it was coming full circle for us, I think. So to honor that, I brought back my bow cosplay that I was wearing on the day we met. Yeah, so that was pretty fun. I even got to take a picture with Anna in my full bow cosplay, so that was pretty fun. She's great, and I hope this is not her last Earp-Con because she just nailed it. I mean, like you would expect.
Yeah, very true. And it was, as those of you who were at the full cast panel know, I was not going to pass up an opportunity to say, let's talk about Kevin. I mean, I had to go there. And I loved, how gracious she was to say she didn't know why she was named Kevin, but now she knew. So that was pretty cool. I mean, how can I not love something like that?
Did you like my intro?
And you knocked me over with a feather with that bit.
Second best Kevin.
Oh, man. You are always on point with those things. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, getting to have her here, obviously extra special, along with all of the other cast members. I just keep repeating myself with how special this is every time we get a chance to get together with the cast and with Earpers and have this energy. Some folks have asked, and I've mentioned it, not in a bad way, but they're like, well, you've done so many, does it kind of get old? Hell no. Every single one is a little unique, and this is too special not to want to spend time doing this, and spending time with all the Earpers, and just, I've attended many other conventions. Many of you know I'm a big fan of Dragon Con and been to other cons, which are wonderful. But the thing I definitely noticed for me at an Earp-Con is I never want to go to my room. I want to stay just down here, down where everybody is, feel this energy. I mean, it's in the air. I mean, it literally, you can feel it at these Earp-Cons. And some of the folks who are listeners and haven't been to one, again, sometimes I get those DMs or questions like, yeah, well, that sounds a little weird. I'm like, well, just do yourself a favor, either talk to someone else besides me, or actually come, and that's when you'll experience it. It was very cool. Many of you know where and for those at home, this might sound a little odd, where the restrooms are here, over by the stairs. I was heading over in that direction, I think yesterday. Today's Sunday, right?
Yes.
I think it was yesterday. And there were a group of people from one of the other conventions that's over there, and there were two gentlemen talking, and they were like, yeah, do you see all those happy people and all those smiling people down there? What's going on? Oh, it's this TV show, Winona Earp. Oh, okay. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I want to hug these two guys right now, because Earpers are selling the show, and you're not even talking to these people, just by being ourselves. And that's an example of how special we are.
Yeah, I had someone who works at the hotel come up to me and say, excuse me, like, I have to know, like, what is this thing that you guys are doing? What is a Winona Earp? And so 30 minutes later, I was done explaining it to her. I still don't think she understood exactly what it was. But it was, because, I mean, what do you say? Like, it's an incredibly difficult thing to explain what this show is without going into a lot of crazy detail and without discussing the fandom. But she wanted to know what it was about because, honestly, she could see how happy we all were and the infectious spirit and how excited everybody was and how fun and all the cosplay and the costumes and just she wanted to know. People want to get in on that joy. So that's one of the things I think Kevin and I enjoy the most when we come to these conventions is just seeing how other people who are outside of the fandom react when a whole bunch of Earpers are in the room. I mean, it's pretty magical.
Yeah. And that's why it'll never get old, and any opportunity I can get, I certainly want to be there. And we had someone, too, on Friday or Saturday, mention to us in terms of how for those folks who are listeners of all of the episodes, we do the daily recap podcasts from the cons that we're at, just to kind of touch on what's going on. And someone mentioned that those were a big motivating factor for why they chose to come. It just sounded like so much fun. By hearing us at the con talk, during that daily 5-10 minute recap of what's going on. It's just their way to be able to feel like they're here, even if they can't be. So to know that someone actually found that helpful, and that was one of the reasons why they decided to take the plunge. I mean, that's why we do this. It's just sharing the excitement we all have for it.
Absolutely.
So
what?
What?
I'm just the hair over here, I'll just do this. You just tell me what to talk about.
Yeah. Now, very honestly, we do have a very intimate crowd, so you folks have a lot of chance to interact here. If there are topics or questions you want us to touch on, we're not joking when we say we shoot from the hip and there is no script for this. So
Hey, that rhymed. Yeah. I mean, that could be like our next jingle for our podcast.
You can pull that off. I
can do it. Let's do it.
If you want to throw up a hand or let us know, it's not like the room is so big in terms of how many people are in here, we can't cover it. But no, let us know if there's something you want to hear us touch on, question or topic, show-related, fandom, whatever it might be. Because that's the reason you took the time to come here instead of doing something else at con. We want you to get the most out of this.
Yep.
So is there anything you want us to go on? Yes.
From us?
Yep.
Oh,
so
yeah.
the question for those at home is asking about, we had done a Peacemaker Theories podcast, and now with things that have changed, and it's now a sword and all, maybe some thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. You can't keep Kevin and I from theorizing about the show. I mean, it's comical, because I always think after we're done with the recording, and lately, I don't know if you've heard a couple of our podcasts, I'm like, and hello to everybody in the future, because it started to occur to me that people were going to hear this podcast like years from now. Like they were going to find Wynonna Earp, and they were going to find our podcast, and then I'm going to sound like an idiot with some of these, like, because they're going to binge it on Netflix, and they're going to be like, I can't believe she thought Jolene was a good guy. Or that she thought the gun was like inside out and like sadness and joy, like, you know, but I think that's what makes it fun for us is to try to figure it out. It's like Emily Andrus's amazing mind and her writers. I'm usually right about a lot of things in life, and I mean, I'm not being like cocky, like I'm a mom, I'm always right. So, but no, but it's you know, I'm usually when you watch a TV show, I'm the person who's figured it out like halfway through, and I'm like, oh, like she's dead and that's her sister. Okay, I got it, you know, and that's what I love about Wynonna is I can never figure any of it out. Like I think I had it all figured out. Like I remember for every theory you hear, he's heard like 12 other ones. And like I had this whole theory like after the season 1, because we had a long time between with the, you know, why is Waverly touched the goo and the eyes and who did she shoot? And I had so many theories and none of them were right. Like none of them. Like I was like, oh, you know, like, yeah, none of them. So, you know, it's fun to theorize. I think that's kind of, as fans, we all do it. I mean, you turn off the TV and you're like, huh, you know, and no one ever sees it coming. I mean, no one, who out here called Gnome Wife? Anyone? Yeah, no.
And I remember our conversations, I don't know how much of it made it on the podcast, after the season 1 finale, you know, when Waverly touched the goo and then turned around and shot. I mean, we were having debates about was she shooting Wynonna, was it Doc, or I think it's this way, it's that person, and then it had nothing at all to do with it.
That's the funny part, is it like, it'll be just like, we don't really want to go, it's fine. But I didn't call shooting like a monster boogeyman in the background, like, that wasn't even on my radar. So that's what, it's amazing, you know, and the fun thing, so I think if it's a sword, so maybe we could talk about this now. I mean, like if it's a sword, it's going to have the same properties as Peacemaker, right? It's just going to have a different... But there's no revenants, right. But, so somebody, and I don't know who this brilliant person was, they DM'd me a couple years ago, and I can't remember who it was, because I said I have a theory, and they went into this long, it was long, but it was really interesting, so I kept reading it, and their theory, which I still think I'm latched onto this, is that that Peacemaker is the is Wyatt Earp. So like everybody, his soul, his spirit is trapped inside of Peacemaker, and that he's doomed. That's his punishment. He's doomed to repeat all of his actions over and over and over again, and to watch his heirs kill the people he killed and be killed by the people he killed. So over and over and over again, that's his, because we don't ever escape our choices, right? So, and everybody else in this has paid a price. Like Doc has paid a price, all the Revenants have paid a price. Like they don't get out of it either, so why would Wyatt get out of it, right? And when they told me this, I was like, oh, that's so good. So I always want to give this person credit, although I don't know their name, so if it's you, please DM me again. But it really, I think that seems to resonate with me, whether it's true or not, you know, but I think if it's a gun versus a sword, but I don't know, I don't think they're going to totally do away with the gun. I think it's going to come back. Right?
I keep going back to Emily's comment after we started to bring up this, you know, everything's changed and you know, the whole premise of the show is now out the window. No Peacemaker, you know, and her comment about, well, it might not be as different as you think it will be, which is typical Emily. She's, you know, you never get anything that confirms your theories, and she usually doesn't blow them out of the water either. So where it could go is about 100,000 different directions. Where I think it might go is going to be wrong. I say that to myself there. But I'm still leaning towards the idea of either an alternate timeline or an alternate universe or something happened to part of the team. So maybe the fact that it turned into a sword is in this, the timeline that Winona and Nedley are in now. And actually they're going to somehow go to a different timeline or a different universe where Peacemaker is still Peacemaker.
Okay, so can I just blow your mind for a second? The other day, Kevin and I were talking about this exact thing. And he said about the alternate universe, which is what I thought too, because all of a sudden she kind of wakes up again and everybody's gone, which kind of to me was like, oh, Winona's in the alternate universe, okay. But then the thing that threw me off was that...
For the listeners at home, that was the amazing Melanie Scrofano just making a quick exit from the room and being a part of the podcast.
And so I thought, she's in the alternate universe, but why if she... anything goes. I told you, fast and loose. That's what we're doing here. But then what threw me off was Nedley being there, right? That's what threw me off. Like, why is Nedley there? Like, if she's in the alternate universe, if she had walked through the town and she was all alone, I'm 100% there. And then this guy, right here, for the listeners at home, I'm pointing at Kevin Batchelder. He says, has anyone ever seen Nedley leave the triangle?
I didn't mean it the way you're all taking it, okay? I was just making another observation.
What if
I didn't say I thought it was mean something, but it's an example.
What if he's a guardian? Like, what if he's one of the guardians, right? In some form or fashion, tasked to protect the heirs, help the heirs, do something. Because we've never seen him leave the triangle ever. In fact, and then of course I'm like, oh. And then I start going, yeah, because when the stripper bus pulled up with the vampires, what other show can you say that and have our whole room go, Yep. When the stripper bus pulls up with the vampires,
Yep.
Got it.
As they do.
As they do. He said, oh, they've been here before. He knew what they were, right? And he walks close, but he doesn't cross the line. I have not seen him, so now I'm like, oh. And he's always been protecting people. He's been protecting Nicole. He's been protecting Waverly. He's protected, Willa. He tried to protect Winona, everybody. And so maybe that's been his job, and as this protector of people. And that would be so great because I love Greg Wilson. So and so now I'm kind of like, oh, then that would make sense for an alternate universe. Because even if she was in the alternate, or even if it's the same universe, maybe he's still trying to break the curse by helping the heirs come full circle. So just a little nugget for you guys at home. You can send your angry DMs to Kevin Batchelder.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing we could go to. I mean, could Wyatt now be soul of whoever living in Nedley? I mean, sure. Mm-hmm. Any of these things, folks, come on, we know it. I don't think it'd be very difficult to shoot holes in any of the theories that most of us are going to come up with because they've done such a wonderful job at creating just enough missing information for us not to be able to say, no, that can't be right. Mm-hmm. Why could Doc go into the garden? Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, we've had lots of discussions there. The premise of what's now changed, and that theory, as you brought up with the question, could be its own podcast series, for crying out loud. We could, especially if we started taking listener thoughts on it, or opinions, or ideas. And it is fun, don't get me wrong, that's part of the fun of the podcast. But the other part is, as we say, we're all going to be proven to be wrong anyway. So it's fun to do it. And the one thing on the podcast side is, unlike doing it with your friends or in a tweet that disappears years later, our recordings last forever.
Forever.
And it's wonderful to hear people say, I just found the show and I'm going through your podcasts, and we have to say, great, and I'm sorry, we're wrong a lot.
Yep. But that's what I love. Is I love because Nedley turns out to be a gnome, and he's got a squid best friend. I mean, we have no idea, because that's the great part is that we don't really know. But there's some of these theories are super fun to toy around in your head with, and they become kind of a bit obsessive, because you're like, oh, but then this could happen, and then this could happen, and then a fan will tweet one little thing, and you're like, oh, that blows a hole in that theory, I had a theory once, I can't remember what it was now because it was really wrong. But I said it on the podcast, I think, and a fan DM'd me and they were like, oh, but the bones were buried. It was about the talisman being buried on the property versus off the property, and I had it backwards. And, I know what it was. I was like, maybe Mama Earp's the real heir, not bored, So I was, or head was the real one. And, but I had the talisman backed up, mixed up, and so I was like, well, there goes that theory. So but that's somewhere you can find that nugget of wisdom. So, yeah.
Yes, you had your hand.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying Nedley, Rosita, and Valdez? Oh, Willa. So Willa. Oh, I like where you're going with this. So we've got a Willa, Rosita, and Valdez trio, like a badass Charlie's Angels. Kidnapping everybody and wreaking havoc on Purgatory. I like it. I could do that. We could do that.
I just love the idea now that we're taking the show's universe, crossing into the reality of scheduling actors at cons to influence the story. And as I'm looking out in this audience, as he's talking about this, folks, you're all doing I can see that. So the collective crazy is a lot of fun, is what it comes down to.
Yeah. I would love to see all these actors come back. I would love to
goodness,
see.
Yes.
I mean, even if Willa herself as a character doesn't come back, I would love to see maybe flashbacks or some way to pull in, Natalie, because she's been so great. I would love to see Kevin come back, because Anna Silk, why not? I would love to see Rosita back. I think there's so much there. There's so much. We had a whole podcast on that redemption arc of who can be forgiven, who as fans, why do we find it easier to forgive certain characters than others? And I'd love to see Rosita come back. I'm fingers crossed that happens. I think we have one in the back.
So you guys did a whole podcast on trying to narrow down your favorite episodes. So I was wondering if you could try to do what was one of your favorite twists or turns that happened in the show that you didn't expect.
All right.
Okay,
So
well, first,
favorite twists.
First, let me tell you about that episode, the podcast episode where we had to do our favorites, okay?
And that was just season 1. We got 2 more of those
Season
coming.
1, we still have 2 more coming. So season 1, Kevin said, so we had this idea, let's do our favorite podcast, our favorite episodes. And so he said, you pick 3.
Yeah, I said, Mano, you pick 3 and I'll pick 3.
And then we'll ask the fans to pick 3. And then we'll do, and I'm like, that's 9. There were 13
It's only
episodes in
13
the
this season.
I'm like, we can talk
Math
about
wasn't my strong suit that day, okay?
But I'm like, but I just thought that was so funny because at first I was like, yeah, wait a minute. Because they're so good. Every episode is so amazing that we had a hard time with that. Which one's your favorite and why? And, you try to do it at home. It's a fun game for all the listeners out there. Pick your favorite episodes. And usually when you do, there's that little voice in your head saying, oh, but that scene was so great from that episode, and that scene was so great, and I can't really leave out that. And even though that episode broke me, it was still so good. And so that wasn't your question, though. Your question was, did we have a twist?
Favorite twist.
Okay.
From any season.
Well, I remember for me, one of the first ones, because there are a few in my head, was that it was Willa that returned. I had started to speculate, I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, that the first one we'd see was actually going to be Mama. I expected her to be reveal that happened at some point in season 1. So I might have mentioned this actually on the season 1 interview with Emily that, 'cause she loves to ask us, just like she does every fan, thoughts on stories and stuff. And I said, no, I thought it was Mama that we'd get back first before Willis. So that was, to me, like a whoa moment. And the fact that not only getting her back, but having her become, one of the bad guys, air quotes, too, is just brilliant stuff that I hadn't envisioned. So that was one of my first ones. What about you?
So it wasn't really, well, can I do 2? Okay. So it wasn't really a twist, but, so there's this certain iconic couch scene. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it wasn't a twist, but it surprised me because I thought we were seasons away from that. Like, I thought it was going to be this slow burn for like seasons and seasons. And so when we got the screener, and I started watching it, and, they did the whole, Gus has this talk with Waverly, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then Waverly, brings Nicole in and, closes the door, and then, jumps her, and I'm like, what are we, really? This is happening now, and you know that gif from The Office where, Michael walks out, and he's like, oh my God, it's happening! That's how I felt, and then we had to keep it secret for, weeks, and I was like, oh my God, but, I was really surprised. It wasn't a twist because I knew eventually we were going to get that. I mean, it was kind of telegraphed in the second episode where you're like, these two are going to be a thing. But I was surprised we got it as early as we did. I honestly thought it was going to be maybe if we're lucky, season 3. But as far as a twist goes, I was really surprised in season 3 to learn that Mama wasn't there. At the end of season 2, she's sitting on a cliff. And then we pick up and we find out she's in an institute, and I was very confused. Why is Mama in an institute? So then realizing that all of the scenes that we had Mama in was in, I was about to say Melanie's head, but Winona's head, in Winona's mind and in conversation she was having with her mother. That was a really cool twist that I never saw that come in either. And I thought that was really creative from the writing staff. Oh, and I have another one, so I'm going to do 3, because the other one was when and it wasn't one that we uncovered in the show, but it was when we learned that Melanie was pregnant.
That was mine. I was just about to say that.
Yeah, because we had gone to set, so they had flew us to set, and not a lot was coming out season 2 that we're filming, and it was crickets chirping, and we weren't getting anything. I was like, well, that's cool. They want to keep it all secret. Cool. And we get there, and we get to set, and everybody, we saw Kat and Dama, we saw Tim, and everybody was like, have you seen Melanie yet? And we're like, no.
I mean, crew people were even
Crew was
saying.
like, have you seen Melanie? Have you seen,
oh, hey, we love the podcast. Have you seen Melanie yet?
Is she missing? Do we need to be worried? What's happening? And then we walked in, and she was sitting down, actually.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we want you to see Melanie. And I'm like, oh, I've seen her before, but cool. I'm happy to see her again. And she stood up and she turned, and she was pregnant. And I think you had to pick our jaws up off the floor. So that was really cool. And then getting to see how they unveiled it in season 2, because we knew it was coming, but we didn't know how it was coming. So we knew it was going to be this one episode, and we're waiting, and I'm like, episode's almost over. And I remember texting him going, there's 5 minutes left in the episode. What is happening? And then they revealed it at the very end, which was really cool. So I think those were probably our favorite twists.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say that, because it just, being able to watch the first few episodes of season 2, knowing that, and looking like, oh, there's an extra scarf on her. Oh, we're seeing her only from the shoulders up here. They're doing all the tricks to avoid too much exposure. It was just beautifully done. But yeah, having to hold that secret for months.
Yeah. I
mean, I was paranoid having conversations, and because you didn't want to inadvertently have something come out. So yeah, that was, I remember, a little bit of an eggshell time when we're usually or at least I am when it comes to on the podcast. And it's not like the podcast is going out live. I mean, it could edit out later, but just having to make sure I wasn't doing anything or saying anything that could be construed to have that be. I did not want to be the one
Yeah.
that let that out.
Because, kudos to the entire cast, all the extras, all the crew, everybody that worked on that show in season 2, they kept it airtight, which is really impressive if you think about it. But we didn't want to be the jerks that spoiled it. And so, I remember we were recording a podcast, and I think, I don't know, I was getting ready to say something like, oh, baby, that would be, and I was like, don't even say the word baby.
Don't even put the word baby, no.
I'm not even going to say the word baby, because
Every time I listen to one of our episodes, for editing purposes, to send to our editor Brent notes, swears to beep out and stuff to remove, I had the ears for the word baby being used, and that's coming out if it is in there.
Yeah.
Just for anything.
The funny part was when we went to set, so we had to come back and do a podcast about it because fans wanted, everybody was like, oh, how was it? And we wanted to share it. We wanted to tell everybody, everything that we saw, which was really, really cool. What we couldn't tell is one little part, but it felt like this giant thing we couldn't talk about. And I remember telling Bridget and Kevin, I said, how do we have a podcast about when we can't talk about anything? We can't, And 3 hours later, we had a podcast, so we figured it out. But it was like the longest podcast we've ever had. Because there were so many other cool things to talk about, like the excitement at the truck, being on set. There was a lot of feelings, which was great. But that was a little bit, I remember when we would release pictures, I would look, this is how crazy we were. We would look at the picture we were getting ready to release, and we were like, okay, can you see any reflection in an eyeball behind, we were so paranoid, but, we did it. Yeah, that was a good question.
Is there another question here? Yep.
So I don't know if they get a second chance, or do they just get to be at peace, right? Do they just get to... I don't know.
I mean, that's where my brain then starts going into that alternate timeline, alternate universe place. Because in theory, if the curse is broken and there's no more peacemaker, in theory there's no more revenants. They're all back in the ground. But if this is a situation of where the world where peacemaker exists, the revenants always have to exist, then all they did is move universes when Bolshar did his thing in this universe.
Wait, huh? What are you saying? Sorry.
Don't make me explain it, because then we'll shoot holes in it. No, the idea that the revenants are there because there's peacemaker. Peacemaker is going to put them down, the whole cycle with the air. If when Bolshar, dissolved, broke, whatever you want to call it, the curse, and then all of a sudden all the revenants disappeared, and so did peacemaker, well, where did it go? If the idea is that we've got two timelines or alternate universes here, maybe they moved to that other, all of that moved, both the revenants and the existence of peacemaker as a gun moved into that another parallel universe, that theory that they're always...
What if it's flipped in the parallel universe and the Earps are the bad guys and the revenants are the good ones? we could go anywhere with
this
this
stuff
people.
just writes itself.
I wonder if this is what the writing room is like.
I would love to hear some of those discussions.
They talked about it in season 3. When they were writing season 3, they were like, there was a mouse, or was it season 2? There was a mouse in the writer's room, and they started nicknaming it, and then I guess it became the pet. But I was like, I'd love to just be that little mouse in the room, or a fly on the wall or something, to just see what goes down. 'Cause the stuff that makes it in the show, what stuff didn't make it in the show? Where's the line of gnome wife, yes, but that's too much. You know what I mean? Or tentacles, yes. Goo, yes. Where's, I'd love to just be in the writer's room with them.
Well, I suspect because of all the amazing ideas they come up with, we will never know that until the day comes that the story ends. The show it's a TV show, it's eventually going to happen. Hopefully not in our lifetime, but it will eventually happen. And then maybe you hear about things that could have been for stories. Because I suspect there's a long list on a wall somewhere, things they haven't done. They're like, okay, that was crazy then, but now it fits with where we're going.
But now it's not that crazy
it's
anymore.
Not in this world. Anything
the
can
fans
exist.
We love it. Look up at potato, sure. Yeah.
All right, so Kevin, since you got someone named after you, Bonnie, if you had someone named after you in the show, who would you want to play you?
Oh, who would I want to play me? Oh, see, I feel like this is a loaded question because it's not going to be this because, like, she had Anna Silk for Kevin. I would, okay, like selfishly, and like, Emily, don't listen to this podcast, please, because then you won't make it happen. Selfishly, I would love for Ksenia Solo to play me because I love the whole Bo and Kenzie thing, and I just think that would just be perfect. But, and I think, I'm like, why can't Kevin have a plucky sidekick from the underworld, right? Who's like, little clipboard, like, Kevin, can I charge your smart card? Do you want another pickle? I think it would be great. So, I'd love for Ksenia Solo. But, to me, like, in my head, the truck's name is Bonnie, so that's like, good enough for me. But, I'm just happy to be here, honestly. Like, I love everything that Emily and her writers do. So, like, I'm just, like I said, happy to be here.
But and I have, when I say this, can you imagine, because we've had this conversation, if we do get Kevin back, and it's more of that discussion of where she's talking about, the Earps didn't do what I thought they should do, and da-da-da-da, and goes back to her, I don't know, is it an office? Where do you do the crazy things that does? If sitting there was Bonnie / Ksenia, yeah, they screwed it up again. Can you just imagine how much people would love seeing the two of them interact? You just got to feel the fandom would just lose its shit.
But you see, this is the thing where I'm like, it's too on the nose, though, right? Like,
No, it's not.
I know, but it's
No, it's
Emily,
not.
so like it feels a little
La
on the
la
nose.
la la la.
I know.
No, I don't think it is.
I'm like, I'm going to be like Jason Momoa. It's going to be like Jason Momoa guest stars as Bonnie. So that's what it's going to be. I'm okay with that. It's fine.
We had anything else here? We have some questions sent in ahead of time. One of the questions we had was asking us, has anything ever surprised or thrown us during an interview or a panel that we've done?
Well, today, when they announced me and I didn't have all my cast, that kind of threw me. I didn't know what to do. So I came out here and I'm like, hi. No, it was fine. But I had some of them. I just didn't have all of them, and I wasn't sure who I was supposed to introduce, and I didn't want to introduce somebody and like not have them walk out. That kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. I think.
From a panel point of view, you folks have probably heard me mention ACON Canada 2018, the closing full cast panel. They were doing an auction of a signed script just before the panel, so I wasn't actually doing the auction, but I was there just kind of assisting, or I don't know, taking up space, but I was at the panel table. And normally when you're the moderator, you're backstage waiting for the cast to get there and kind of get things ready. But I was out there on the stage, and they had to, raise some great money for charity. So they finished that, and I knew we were already running late, so I went to stick my head backstage to make sure everyone was there so that I would start the panel, just much like with you today, not knowing who you have. And that was the panel where almost everyone was wearing the rainbow onesies, which was a great reveal as they came out one at a time. If you were watching the video, you were there. But imagine sticking your head backstage and just seeing the cast standing there in rainbow onesies.
Except Tim.
Except for Tim. But talk about okay, it's going to be that kind of panel today. So that certainly throws you off. And that was the panel, too, where as moderators, we've got lists of questions and topics. You've got serious stuff. You've got funny stuff. That was the one where everyone, and I'm including the audience, that was a great con, much like this one is, but it's the end of that last day. Everyone's a little punch-drunk, silly. Any questions I tried to ask them, they weren't even listening to what I was talking about. They were just having so much fun. They'd look at me, Dom and Tim at different points were like, oh, it's Kevin, I'm on the podcast. I'm like, and I wanted to say, no, you want a panel, answer my question, please? Because it was just having fun. So, I mean, I had to radically change the questions I was going to ask right in midstream. So that'll definitely be something that surprises you.
Yeah.
As far as podcast interviews,
I think for the interviews, the cool thing, it surprised me that we first did, okay, start over. The first interview we did was Kat Burrell. So I picked a winner because she was lovely, and it was instantly, I was so nervous, and it was instantly like talking to a friend. Like, it was such an easy podcast. And the next one we picked was Dom. Again, great choice, yeah. So again, it's super easy. So the whole cast, we had them one-on-one, and they were all so easy to talk to. As we got into season 2, we had such a familiarity with them by that point that then when they came on the podcast, it was really easy. So when we started to bring in some of the secondary characters who might have been brand new, I had to go back a little bit to, I don't know this person as well, and they don't know me as well. So in the beginning of an interview, sometimes it can feel like you're trying to find your footing, with that person. And they're all such amazing and giving of their time. But I love the moment in the interview where you can almost hear them sort of relax a little bit and realize that we're not going to ambush them with some horrible question, and they're just having fun, and then we just start really talking, So it's not really a surprise, but it always surprises me when they do relax, I guess, because I'm like, oh, good, we're not scary yet. So, I mean, and it's been really fun to be able to have such different interviews with all of them in that way. But definitely bringing new people into the podcast, you never know what you're going to get, so it's always a bit of a surprise. I mean, you know what you're going to get when you interview Dom. It's like, she's got her tea, we're going to be here for 2 hours, it's awesome, so yeah.
yeah, and then the Tim season 1 interview, as far as, surprises, was the one where he basically broke, well, not basically, he did. He broke the news that the cast was going to be at San Diego Comic-Con that year. And we didn't know that. Well, no one knew that yet. And I had a question that was just knowing him and how much of a comic book geek he is and how much he loves conventions. I was just asking him about cons. And he was, many of you don't now know Tim. He's just such an excited guy that bring up the topic of cons. And that's when he went with and did you hear we're friggin' going to San Diego Comic-Con? Silence, silence, silence. Oh, I don't know if I should have told you that. So I had to DM Emily and say, by the way, Tim said this, am I allowed to use this? And she's like, oh, well, it had to come out sometime. Go ahead, I guess, you guys get the exclusive.
I'm like, yes, release it now.
But it was the genuine nature of Tim and his excitement. And also we're not going to make it look bad. I mean, I'll make sure to check with Emily. But that's the comfort level that has started to develop. But also just the excitement of, squee, they're going, and, we're going to get to put the news out there. So that was a nice surprise. And also as far as throwing us off on the interview, I mean, and I suspect everyone in the room, and 99% of you listening have heard the Dom Season 3 interview.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, we've now done multiple Way Hot interviews. We've done a couple of season interviews with Dom. We know how amazing she's going to be, but you could never be prepared for what happened in that almost 2 hours of recording. And sometimes when we're doing the interviews, we have a Google Doc that Bonnie and I share that has questions, and every now and then one of us will put a note in, the other can see it in terms of direction of where we're going to go and so forth.
Don't give away all of our secrets.
And for that one was an example of just both of us realizing by that point, but also just reinforcing, just shut up. We're going to shut up. We're going to let Dom just talk. Just let her go. We don't want to take her off this trail. We don't want to, bring up anything that's in this document. There is nothing that is more gold than what she's already bringing on her own. So sometimes the best interviews are the ones where we say very little.
Yeah, in fact, that's usually a good rule of thumb. No, that interview was funny because when she finally did, when the phone call was finally over, and she left, him and I was really quiet for a second, And then I think it was me. I was probably, because I'm always talking. I said, did that just happen? Like, that was really cool. Kevin said, yes. And he was really like focused. Like, he wasn't really talking back. And I'm all like, oh, this is so great. Oh my God. And he's like, quiet, really quiet. And I'm like, are you okay, Kevin? He's like, I'm just checking to make sure it all recorded. Because he was, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Like, what if that didn't record, you know? Fortunately, because he's the master at all that stuff, it recorded. But yeah, because we knew in that moment, like, that was a big surprise.
You would never get that again.
No.
We would never be able to recreate it.
No.
Because we do the interviews, normally when we do them, for a little technical info, we do them over a conferencing service. So the conferencing service has a recording, not the highest quality, but it could work. And then I have a digital recorder on my computer at home that gets us better quality. So that way there's a backup just in case. But in this case with Dom, she was in the UK. And the conferencing service would have been an expensive call. So we did it over Skype. So there was only one platform, was my digital recorder. So when that call ended, I knew there was only one place that I had this interview. And let's face it, every bit of technology fails at some point. And I just wanted to be 1,000% sure before I said anything to Bonnie, before we did anything else, that I literally took that recorder, took the file off it, copied it to like 3 computers and a cell phone all at the same time to make sure I had backups before we continued it, because I was just so paranoid that this would be Murphy's Law at that time. You know, one of the few times we didn't have a backup, and we had one of the most amazing experiences of our life, and wanted to make sure we could share it.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise in the sense of you just didn't know where it was going to go.
Yeah. What do we have on there?
Let's see. We've got a little bit of a special treat for you at the end of the podcast, folks, but a couple more topics here, unless you folks want to throw anything else out. Yes, Liz.
Hi.
Liz, thank you. You have been amazing this weekend.
Yes.
As have
Thank
all
you.
the volunteers.
All the volunteers are amazing.
All the volunteers, but yes.
First, if I say Bo and Kinsey, Bonnie and Kevin,
I mean, come on, right?
It writes itself.
just saying. But we have all done so many cons together. Do you have a favorite convention moment that's kind of just stuck out to you that is your favorite to remember?
I mean,
Earp Sister Panel, Earp Expo. I mean, with all due respect to Earp-a-palooza and every other of these cons, because they're all like children would be to a parent. You love them all, but I've waited for something like that for years. So to get that opportunity to do that panel with them, and then to have such a really good panel where the two of them were so on point, and Jill gave me the Earp Sister, baby girl photo collage, and I could show it to them right there on the panel. Because that's always the thing for me.
you got blasted by Melanie. She was like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got cut off. I did what moderators are not supposed to do. You should always know what the next question is, and I didn't. And yep, she got me. I deserved it. But doing and moderating these panels is just an amazing thing for us as fans. But the thing, like I said, a moderator is supposed to know where the questions are, know where you're going next, and so forth. And that was a situation, certainly at that panel, where I was so much of a fan. I did catch myself a couple of times and have to go, whoa, you're running this thing, dude. I mean, I was just like, that's in my head was I was thinking, and I had to realize, no, you're the moderator, you need to keep it going, because it's just, they capture us that way with all of this stuff.
yeah, for me, it's a similar situation. Last year at Earp-a-palooza, when I did the Ladies of Purgatory panel last year, and then this one is going to go down as well, because there's just something about being on that stage last year and it was only my second panel, and so being on stage with those women and having some of those conversations and having them be open and share themselves like that, there were those moments where I was, you can watch it, you can see it, I'm in the corner like, and then I'm like, look, oh gosh, I'm supposed to be like finding the next question, and I didn't want to like derail the conversation, right? You don't want to, have like Megan Follows giving some amazing like worldly advice about life, and then be like, okay, if you could be a comic book character, so But that was that moment where I kept getting pulled out of my job of being a moderator and into just being a fan and listening to these women talk, and it was so empowering. So that has to be my favorite memory. Being up here earlier with Anna Silk and the rest of them, Melanie and Natalie at the ladies panel was just, there was one moment where I just kind of looked down the row, and Anna's next to me, and she looks at me and she smiles, and I'm like, what is my life right now? Like, you know, and Melanie's on the end, like, you know, just look at, and I'm just like, this is incredible, you know. To have the opportunity that we've been given to do this is something we don't take for granted ever, and so we feel very, very fortunate to be able to do this and bring this back to the fans, and you know, those are always very special moments. I think, but I think if I were going to really pick my favorite moment of any con, it might have been when Kevin Batchelder walked out dressed as Madonna. And lip sync like a virgin. I mean, 4 years ago, Kevin, would you
Never, ever.
I mean, that was your long game, right? Like, you've done all this just for that moment, right?
Never in a million years, alternate universes, ever would that have occurred to me, except in this Earp-a fandom. And this was a case of several weeks ago, and it's typical of the fun on Twitter, somehow Doc Stash and I ended up in a discussion, and she threw out this idea of, you know, someday it'd be fun to do a lip sync. And, you know, I've never performed. I mean, I haven't. I wasn't even a kid who was ever in the school play or anything like that. Not my thing. But, so I've never done karaoke. Again, I can't sing, so whatever. But when she said lip sync, I'm like, oh, I'm a silly person. I, you know, love the songs I love. That, and I didn't say it to her publicly at that time, but I thought, yeah, you know, that's a possibility. And it's just that idea back in my head. And then we were at Akon this year, so that's like early August. And it was the Andrea Higgins party, which was a lot of fun. You know, at her parties, we're all kind of hanging out. She's playing great tunes, and songs come on that you know, all of you, as you're standing around, you start to sing along or whatever. And Andrea played Madonna's "Express Yourself." And yeah, I have been a big Madonna fan. I mean, I saw her on the Who's That Girl tour in 1987. I'm that old. 20th row, center, premium seats.
I love how you still know what row you sat in.
Come on, this Madonna 20th row, that was, woo.
It makes me love you even more.
But when the song came on, Express Yourself, I started to sing along, and we were all kind of dancing. And very honestly, the reactions of all the Earpers around was like, you know, they forgot that I haven't always been a 59-year-old grandfather. You know, I did have an earlier life. Yeah, shocking, I know, huh? So the reactions there actually in my head then kind of went, oh, well, if we did the lip sync and I did Like a Virgin, they would go nuts. So that's when the idea kind of came together, and then we tied it in with a fundraiser to really, you know, in true Earper fashion. And I started looking for costumes, and, you know, there are several that are available online, but I'm looking at them going, well, that's cheap. You know, it's not going to be a real Madonna look. People still love it. Throw a wig on Kevin, they would love it. But one of the links when I was searching, I found a woman on Etsy who makes vintage dresses and so forth, and she had the Madonna one there. I mean, it wasn't expensive, but, you know, again, it wasn't the $35 Walmart special either. So I reached out to her because, you know, just to make sure she'd be okay making it for a guy. Because there were a lot of photos of women who'd gone to parties or Halloweens with it, and she said, no, I'd be glad to. That'd be awesome, you know, to do that. So I mean, I had to send in chest measurements, waist, height, all that stuff. The corset had to fit just right. But it's because of this lady right here. When I was looking for those costume things, whether or not I was going to do the $35 one or this, because I had to think, oh, can I afford this? Can I pull this off? Again, this lady and what she's done, go big or go home. Like, okay, then if I'm going to do this, I am going to effing do this full speed. So that's when, yeah, the dress and the necklaces. My daughter, who's an esthetician, was looking for bracelets and hair stuff and makeup, and it just took on a life of its own.
I love how committed you are to that role. But I never told you it's go big or go home. But never go home, ever. Like, I've never gone home. Just
nope.
do it. Like Emily said.
You went all in on the podcast, on
Yeah.
the interview. Everything that we've done has been such a joy because of that. Like Emily talked about today. That's
yes.
very much Bonnie. Say yes. I don't know any idea what a podcast is. I'll say yes and then figure it out.
Yeah, I opened a Twitter account for a show I hadn't even watched. So let that sink in for a second. And then did a podcast, or I'd never heard a podcast before. He's like, do you want to be on a podcast? I'm like, sure. Google, what is a podcast? She's absolutely right. Say yes. Just say yes. So many of the things in life, when I was growing up, I always knew that I never wanted to regret any, it's hard to, I'm sure you regret stuff in your life, sure, but like I always knew for me, the kind of person that I was always going to have a hard time with the things I didn't do. Like that was going to be the things that I regretted the most. So I think I always have that in the back of my mind, that like, the what ifs and there's a little nugget of information. When I was in college, I used to write songs, and I wrote tons and tons of songs, and I loved it. I wanted to be a songwriter, and I went to San Francisco to work. I was a NICU nurse, and there were this open mic night, and they had people there, and they were doing original songs, and they were really good, and I chickened out. I got scared, and I didn't do it. And flash forward 25 years, and now I'm doing it. So a tiny bit. But it's. I think that's that moment where I kind of look back and go, oh, like you should have just gotten up there, But I was young. I was 24, something like that, and just scared and nervous. And I mean, the thing I was most nervous about was like, what if people don't like me? Mm-hmm. And I think that what Kat was saying, and who cares? Like honestly, what I've learned throughout all of my journey, which has been very different the last several years, I've had a lot of a journey. My journey's amazing, and it's been great. And I have learned that, so people don't like you. The cool part about that is when you put yourself out there, you find the people who do. And you find the people who are part of your tribe, who get you, who get your humor, who get your spirit, who get your sense of kindness, who want to make the world a better place. Whatever it is that makes you, you find them. So yeah, people might not like you. Those aren't your people. And when you're scared to put yourself out there because you're afraid of the people who don't like you or who won't like you, you're limiting yourself because you're not able to find the ones who do. So, and I would have never thought that, my sidekick would be, how old, Kevin? I don't even know.
59.
59-year-old grandfather, but here we are. So, I mean, say yes, and the rest will follow. So, say yes to the dress. That's what Kevin did. He said yes to the dress. We're going to wrap it up here in a second. Before we go, I just want to shout out to the vendors outside who put their blood, sweat, and tears into making some incredible merchandise. First up, we have Fangirl shirts. You can find all their amazing merchandise at fangirlshirts.com. They have t-shirts, buttons, koozies, stickers, and lots of amazing stuff. We also have Only Words Now Designs, which is amazing. So go check them out at Only Words Now Designs. They're an Etsy shop, so you can find them on Etsy. Google that. There's also Soul Shippers. They're not online yet, but they hope to be soon. Their booth has some cute, they were dubbed the kissing booth because they have so many pictures of some really cool people kissing. So check them out. And then there were galpalstitches.com, Galpal Stitches. Go look them up online. If you didn't get a chance to check their vendor booth, you can find their stuff online. So for all of our listeners out there, we support Earpers who continue to make some incredible merchandise for us. And the last one is Rochelle's Therapy at Etsy.com. So go check those out.